Everyone. Is my voice audible to all of you?
Assalamualaikum, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for acknowledging that. Okay. So first of all, today I will just begin with this a very good, nice quotation that I really love it. Coaching is an unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. So we here as a Med-Home team are not here to teach you. We are just helping you to make you a little bit more polished and to more furnish you for the exam and to make your journey a big successful. And together, inshallah, we'll definitely be celebrating it and making it towards part 2 and inshallah for part 3 as well. So for today, we are going to study with the peritoneal cavity. We as a Med-Home team, we work with you all together to provide you strategies, the management, the whole team behind is working throughout day and night for your success. And together, definitely we are going to make it a success for all of you. So for today's session, I highly appreciate if your mics are muted. If you have any questions, you can either unmute yourself or you can raise your hand or you can type your question in the chat box. I'll highly appreciate for that for everyone. So today we are going to study the peritoneal cavity, the greater omentum, lesser omentum, greater and the lesser sac, and the applied clinical anatomy in relation to the peritoneal cavity. So basically, first of all, I'll start that what is peritoneal cavity or what is peritoneum. So peritoneum, it's a thin membrane. It's a thin membrane which is lining the abdominal wall and covering much of the abdominal viscera. The parietal peritoneum, it lines the wall of the cavity, and the visceral peritoneum, it covers the viscera. Between the parietal and the visceral layers of the peritoneum is a potential space that we call as the peritoneal cavity. So if you look here with me, this hole is the abdominal cavity. This is the anterior wall of the abdominal cavity and this is the posterior wall of the abdominal cavity. This hole is space in between, the yellow color is space in between is the peritoneal cavity. So this lining, if you look here me that if you follow with my arrow or pen, the whole of this cavity that I'm marking is the parietal peritoneum, while the organs which are surrounded like the diaphragm, which is surrounded by the bluish line or the red and that is going to be the visceral peritoneum. By visceral peritoneum, I mean it's the covering or the lining which is covering the viscera. Either it could be diaphragm, it could be stomach, it could be spleen, any of the abdominal cavity organs that are being covered will be known as the visceral peritoneum, and whole of the abdominal cavity that is surrounded on the anterior, posterior, anywhere on the sides will be called as the parietal peritoneum. In between this space, the yellow colored space is the peritoneal cavity. So if you look here again, it's the same thing. I'll just mark it here more quickly. So this is the diaphragm and this whole peritoneum from the posterior, this is the posterior layer of the abdomen, posterior wall, and this is the anterior wall of the abdomen. This whole space is known as the peritoneal cavity. And any organs, this organ which is covered by its peritoneum is known as the visceral peritoneum, and the whole of the pink part is known, will be this whole red line will be covering as the parietal peritoneum. Now, if you look here in the organs, I've also make it clear that if you follow this blue line, that this is the parietal peritoneum. And the organs like stomach, the the transverse colon, the duodenum, they all are covered by its peritoneum. The blue colored one is the peritoneum, that is known as the visceral peritoneum. Now when I was studying for my exam, I did made my notes. And how did I make my notes? I tried to take few of the snapshots from here, and I've taken them as a slides just to make it clear that how I used to make my notes. And just in the last moment, I just revised these notes. I did not go back to any books or anywhere. So if for the peritoneum, how did I go for it? I wrote this as a peritoneum. It was histologically divided into two layers, the outer layer and the inner layer. The outer layer was also known as the fibrous layer. And what is the function of this outer layer of the peritoneum? Its function was to give strength to the membrane. While the inner layer of the peritoneum was also known as mesothelial cells, and it secretes the serous fluids. It lubricates the surface of the viscera and helps them in keeping them in the normal space of the cavity, abdominal cavity. That is the function of the inner layer. And the function of the outer layer is to just give strength to the membrane, peritoneal membrane. Now this peritoneum or peritoneal cavity, it is divided into three layers. It has two layers, and one of them is a false parietal layer, or that is the outer layer, or it is also known as the parietal peritoneum. The second one is known as the visceral layer, which is covering the viscera, also known as visceral peritoneum, and we can also name it as inner layer. And the third one is the peritoneal folds, by which the organs are suspended. That I'm going to explain you in the next few slides. Now, what is the function of the parietal peritoneum? So parietal peritoneum, it lies the inner surface of the abdomen and the pelvic wall and the lower surface of the diaphragm. The blood and the nerve supply are same as those of the underlying body wall, and this parietal peritoneum is pain sensitive. So whenever any patient is having pain, the cause of the pain or the peritoneum that is causing pain is the parietal peritoneum. Now if you look here with me in the diagram, now this whole parietal peritoneum, it is extending from below the diaphragm, covering whole of the abdomen and also covering partially in the pelvic cavity also. Whole of the it's covering the diaphragm, the whole of the abdominal cavity, as well as part of the pelvic cavity. Now coming to the visceral peritoneum, it's the layer which is just covering the viscera. It is lining, or it lines the outer surface of the viscera. The blood and the nerve supply are similar to those of the underlying viscera. Now the visceral peritoneum, it is sensitive when the viscera is either stretched, distended, or there's an ischemia. Then the visceral peritoneum is responsible for causing pain. Otherwise, most of the pain is caused by the parietal peritoneum. Now, what are the functions of peritoneum? So peritoneum or peritoneum layers, it provides a wet and a smooth gliding surface which will prevent friction from happening, because if friction of the organs will happen, that is why definitely it will cause damage. And that is why these parietal peritoneum and the visceral peritoneums are created in order to prevent friction. The other function of the peritoneum is it prevents the spread of infection by greater momentum, which wraps an inflamed organ. So if we consider this as an organ like a diaphragm, it is being covered by its peritoneum. So this peritoneum is basically there if any infection occurs, so it will be just limited within this peritoneum. This infection will not go out of it. That means this is to protect. God has making such a mechanism in our body just to prevent infection from moving from one another or spreading from one organ to the another organ by creating these visceral peritoneum. And this is also known as the policeman of the abdomen, because the function is it is protecting or preventing the body from getting infections, from preventing it from the spread of infections. That is why it can also be called as policeman of the abdomen. Now it has fluids which it secretes. It is rich in macrophages, lymphocytes, and for other defensive mechanism. So that if any infection occurs, it will have, or if any infection is present here, the microbe is present, it will be eaten by the macrophages, the lymphocytes, but it will never let it go out of the organ into the body cavity, because to prevent a spread of the infection. The main purpose of this peritoneum is to prevent it from spreading of the infection from one organ to the other organ. The other most important function is that it provides nutrition and the innervation of the contained viscera by various peritoneal folds. The latter helps the partial retention of abdominal organs in position also. So it will not only work as a protection mechanism, it will also provide as a nutrition or the food for the viscera and the various peritoneal folds. And it also provides a surface area for the absorption. It can also excrete some waste products from blood. That is, example, urea is excreted in the peritoneal cavity. And also the most important function with relation to our OBGY, it helps in the transfer of oocytes that take place through the peritoneal cavity. Am I clear till here so far?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Any questions before we move ahead?
This transfer of oocyte, can please clear this question? This
Sorry, which one?
transfer of oocytes. Can you please make it clear?
Yeah, transfer of oocytes takes place through the peritoneal cavity, because oocytes is the only organ of the cavity which is intraperitoneal. Otherwise, all the organs of the female cavity, they are retroperitoneal or outside the peritoneal cavity. So that is why when the oocytes and the sperm, they meet together, it travels through the peritoneal cavity.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. So anyone can repeat quickly for me before we move ahead. So now, would you like to try? Sadaf, would you like to give it a try?
To what? No, I'm
Yeah.
clear. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm clear.
All right. Yeah. You're clear. I just want you to repeat
Yeah.
the peritoneum, a part of the peritoneum cavity. What are the functions that you can just recall by not looking at the slide?
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you
Peritoneum,
so much.
thin membrane covering the viscera and abdominal wall. It has two parts, parietal and visceral. Histologically, parietal, it covers the abdominal wall, while visceral, it covers the viscera, right? Then histologically, peritoneum has an outer layer and inner layer. That outer layer is the fibrous layer that strengthens the membrane, and the inner layer is also mesothelial cell layer that secretes serous fluids and lubricates the organ, right?
Yeah.
Peritoneum has three folds: parietal, visceral, and peritoneal folds, through which organs are suspended. Parietal peritoneum is pain sensitive, and its blood supply and nerve supply is the same as that of organs, while visceral peritoneum, it's not pain sensitive as that much, but pain when the viscera are stretched or distended or there is ischemia.
Yeah. And what are the functions of peritoneal? Can anyone, Sadaf, would you like to tell us the functions of peritoneum? Anyone else would like to try for the functions of peritoneum?
Someone else, or I should proceed?
Yeah, please proceed. No problem.
It secretes fluid-rich in macrophages, lymphocytes, and other for defensive mechanism, provide nutrition and innervation of contained viscera by various peritoneal folds. The latter help partial retention of abdominal organ in position. Number 5 provides a surface area for absorption. Number 6 excretes some waste product from the blood, example urea in peritone. Number 7 transfer of oocyte take place through the peritoneal cavity. Oocyte is the only female reproductive part which is intraperitoneal, while the rest of female reproductive system is retroperitoneal.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sadaf. You explained us really very beautifully.
Thank you. No problem.
Thank you. So now let's move ahead. Now, what are the folds of peritoneum? So basically the folds of So the folds of peritoneum, these are the organs which are suspended by the fold of peritoneum, and they are mobile organs. So in the examples of the folds of peritoneum, we have the mesentery. The mesentery is covering, or is an example of peritoneal fold which is covering the small intestine. We also call it as a mesentery of the small intestine. Then we have, in terms of other example, will be the mesocolon, which is the fold which is covering the colon, that is called as mesocolon. Then we have omentum, which is either greater omentum, and we have lesser omentum. We have two of them, and it is covered. The omentum is covering the stomach. So these are the examples of the peritoneal fold. They keep the organs into its normal position, and the organs can be mobile. They can move freely. Now, what are the relationship of organs in relation to the peritoneum? So we have two types of things. We have one is intraperitoneal and the another is retroperitoneal. Intraperitoneal means that they intraperitoneal means that they are invading the peritoneal sac from behind and being surrounded almost completely by peritoneum and suspended in the peritoneal cavity by folds of peritoneum. So if you look here, or we can take the example like if we take the example of spleen. Spleen is an organ which is intraperitoneal. That means that let's suppose it's an spleen, so it will be covered by its peritoneum. So any organ which is covered by its peritoneum or the visceral peritoneum, that is known as an intraperitoneal organ. And now what is retroperitoneal? Retroperitoneal means that if we consider it as an supraadrenal gland, and this is not going to be covered by peritoneum, or it can only be covered by peritoneum on one side, on the outer side. So if it is partially covered with the peritoneal cavity only on the anterior aspect, then it is going to be called as a retroperitoneal organ. So if we consider this as an organ, so it is covered by its own peritoneum and it has a mesentery as well. So mesentery can either be of two things, either it can be of a small intestine or it can be of the colon. So this mesentery is peritoneum is covering the organ. That is why this organ is supposed to be an intraperitoneal organ. But if we look at this organ, it is only partially covered with the peritoneum, not in the whole surface it is covered. So this only partial covering of the peritoneum on the anterior aspect is known as a retroperitoneal organ. Can anyone tell me what are the examples of intraperitoneal and retroperitoneal organs? Anyone? Or just can answer it in the chat box.
Stomach, colon,
Yeah.
and retroperitoneal organs include kidney and female reproductive organs.
Hmm. Yes. Excellent. Yeah. And any other more? Okay. So we have few examples of the retroperitoneal organs and we have few examples of intraperitoneal organs. So for retroperitoneal organs, you can remember it in the form of sad pucker. So it's a mnemonic that is known as sad pucker. S stands for suprarenal gland, A stands for aorta, and D stands for duodenum. The only part of duodenum that is retroperitoneal is the second and the third part of duodenum. And in the pancreas, P stands for pancreas. The whole of the pancreas is an extra retroperitoneal organ, except the tail, which is an intraperitoneal organ. Then we have U stands for ureter, C stands for colon. Colon is going to be an ascending and the descending colon, which is an retroperitoneal organ. Then we have K. K stands for kidney, E stands for esophagus, and then we have R, which stands for rectum. So the whole mnemonic, or you can just remember it in the form of a mnemonic, that is sad pucker. S stands for suprarenal gland, A for aorta, D for duodenum, which is the second and third part of duodenum only. P stands for pancreas, except the tail of pancreas. For U, we have ureter. For C, we have ascending and the descending colon. For K, we have kidney. For E, we have esophagus. And for R, we have the rectum. Now, examples of intraperitoneal organs include stomach, ileum, jejunum, cecum, and appendix. These are the examples which have already come in the exam, in the previous important questions. In the previous important questions, they have asked which of the following organ is an intraperitoneal organ. So these were the correct answer, that stomach is one of the intraperitoneal organ, ileum, jejunum, cecum, and appendix. That you need to remember from all the recalls up till now, till 2020, they have asked in the exam these questions. That is why I've taken only the examples from these important ones. Now, what are the ligaments of peritoneum? So peritoneum, it's a double layer fold of peritoneum which connects an organ to an abdominal wall or to the other organs. So what is the example of a ligament of peritoneum? It can either be gastrosplenic ligament. That means if we consider this as a gastric or as an stomach, and this is the spleen, then the layer of the peritoneum which is connecting in between two of them is the ligament, and this ligament will be known as the gastrosplenic. Gastro, we have taken it from the stomach, and a spleen from the splenic. So in between that is connecting both of them is known as the gastrosplenic ligament. If you look here in this, you can also identify that we have gastrosplenic ligament. The other one we have is the splenorenal ligament. It is going to connect a spleen and the kidney in between. If you look at here, this ligament is a small ligament, is an example of a splenorenal ligament. So these ligaments, they are basically the double layers folding of the peritoneum that is forming. Now this, either it can connect two organs together, that is stomach and the spleen and the kidney, or it can connect stomach with the anterior abdominal wall or kidneys with the posterior abdominal wall. So any two connections between an organ or abdominal wall is going to be called as the ligament of peritoneum, or the fold. It's a double layer fold of peritoneum. You can see it here more clearly that this small ligament is known as a splenorenal ligament. This is the spleen and this is the kidney. Both of it they are connected by a ligament that we call as a splenorenal ligament. Now this hole is a parietal peritoneum that is being covered. In the cross section, if you can see, this hole is the parietal peritoneum, and this hole which is covering the organs, if it is covering the stomach, this is the visceral peritoneum. If it's covering any colon, then it's going to be a visceral peritoneum. Any organ which is covered is known as the visceral peritoneum, and outside the cavity, it is going to be known as the parietal peritoneum. Now we have another structure or another thing that we call as a lesser omentum. Now, what is lesser omentum? Basically, lesser omentum, it's a fold of peritoneum which is extending from the lesser curvature of the stomach and first 2 centimeters of the duodenum up to the liver. So if you see here with me in this diagram, this hole is the stomach. This is the greater curvature of the stomach. And this is the lesser curvature of the stomach. And from the stomach, it starts the duodenum. Directly will start with the duodenum, if you can look here. And this hole is the liver. This whole part is the liver. So this is small space in between the lesser curvature of the stomach, 2 centimeters of duodenum, which is connecting with the liver. This small space is known as the lesser omentum. Now, what is the importance of this lesser omentum? Now, its function is that it is basically providing its sperm by the peritoneum. Now, if we name it as a stomach is always known as gastric. So it is known as gastric, and the liver is known as the hepatic. So we can, another name for this lesser omentum can also be called as gastro-hepatoomentum, as it is covering in between the stomach, lesser curvature of the stomach and duodenum to the liver. So this is small space is known as the lesser omentum. Now this lesser omentum, it is divided into 4 ligaments. It has 4 ligaments. The first ligament is known as the hepatogastric ligament. That is, hepatic is the liver, gastric is the stomach. So it is a ligament which is forming in between the stomach and the liver. That is known as the hepatogastric ligament. If you look here in this, you can find the hepatogastric ligament. This whole connection is known, this part is known as the hepatogastric ligament, or another name for hepatogastric ligament, omentum. For lesser omentum, it can also be hepatogastric omentum. Now, another ligament is hepatoduodenal ligament. Now, it is the ligament which is formed in between duodenum and liver. So, if you see this small part, 2 centimeters of the duodenum, which is covering, which has a connection with the liver, with the help of the lesser omentum, and this small connection is known as a hepatoduodenal ligament, because this is the liver, this is the duodenum, and this is the liver which is making the connection. So this small area or this small space is known as the hepatoduodenal ligament. Now we have 2 other ligaments also, that is called as the hepatopharynx ligament. Hepatopharynx means that it is connecting the liver with the diaphragm, and another one is hepatoesophageal ligament, but they are very less important. That is why I have not mentioned them here. But I'm just telling you for your knowledge that you should be knowing the names hepatopharynx and the hepatoesophageal ligament. So now what it says, that lesser sac is a sac which is present behind the lesser omentum. So in this diagram, we cannot see, but if we look, I'm going to show it in the next slide, that behind in the posterior relationship of the lesser omentum, we will find the lesser sac. And this right margin of the lesser omentum, it is free behind, which lies in the epiploic foramen. Now these two I'll be explaining you in the next few slides. Now what is the relationship or what are the boundaries of this lesser omentum? So again you can see it here very clearly. Again it's the same picture that we taken from the Gray's Anatomy, that this is the lesser curvature of the stomach and this is a small part of the duodenum. This is the liver. So this whole space in between is the lesser omentum. You can see here the hepatoduodenal ligament. You can see here the hepatogastric ligament, and this whole area is known as the lesser omentum. Now, if we look here, now if we talk about in terms of attachment, so inferiorly, this lesser omentum, it is attached below to the lesser curvature of the stomach and upper first 2 centimeter of the duodenum. So you don't have to remember anything. You can just easily remember in the relationship easily, because what I told you before was that lesser omentum, it's a fold of peritoneum which is extending from lesser curvature of the stomach, 2 centimeter of the duodenum up to the liver. So it's only the lower relationship or the inferior relationship of the lesser omentum. And superiorly, it is attached to the liver as an inverted L shape. So if you look here, I can tell you how this L shape is formed. So this L shape is formed in this way. So that is why it is said as it is attached to the liver as an inverted L. Vertical limb is attached to the fissure of ligamentum venosum, and horizontal limb is attached to the porta hepatis. So this horizontal limb, once we are going to study the anatomy of the liver, we are going to know what porta hepatis is and what is ligamentum venosum. So this part is attached, this horizontal limb of L, it is attached to the porta hepatis, and this longitudinal limb or the vertical limb is attached to the ligamentum venosum. So if we look here as an L here, so this horizontal part of the L is known as attached with the porta hepatis, and this vertical part of the L, it is attached to the ligamentum venosum. These are all parts of the liver which we are going to study when we are going to discuss in detail the anatomy of the liver. Now, am I clear here till the lesser omentum? Or do you want me to repeat anything? Is it clear to all of you? Can anyone please acknowledge me for that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much, Rubina, for acknowledging, and Sana for that. Okay. So this was the lesser omentum that we have studied. Now comes the greater omentum. So what is greater omentum? It's basically a large fold of the peritoneum which is suspending from the greater curvature of the stomach like an apron, and it covers the loop of the intestine. So you can see here very clearly that this hole is the greater curvature of the stomach. And the area, this whole area is called as a greater omentum. This whole part is known as a greater omentum. So if I make a very rough stomach here, that considering this as a lesser curvature and this is the greater curvature. So from the greater curvature will start the greater omentum. From the lesser curvature will start the lesser omentum. So very easy to remember that from the lesser omentum will start the lesser. LL stands for same, so you can remember it easily.
That's the correct.
Yeah. And for the greater omentum, G for greater and G for greater curvature of stomach and G for greater omentum. So you can easily remember it. Now, what is this peritoneum or this greater omentum? So it has the 4 layers of peritoneum. which are fused together to form a fenestrated membrane which contains a variable amount of fat. So it has a few content as a fat. Now it forms a partition between the supracholic and the infracholic compartments of the greater sac. So basically the function of this greater omentum, it is the folds of peritoneum which is extending from the greater curvature of the stomach to the going downwards up to the loop of intestine, or we can say extending up to the transverse colon. And it covers the intestine in the form of an apron. Now what are the attachments of the greater omentum? So the greater omentum, the anterior 2 layers are suspended from the greater curvature of the stomach to variable extent, and they fold upon themselves to form posterior 2 layers. So you can see here, if this is the stomach here, the whole part, this greater curvature of the stomach, this structure, this dark brownish color, if you see, this whole is the greater curvature here. So it ascends to the anterior border of the pancreas, and the 4th layer is covering the transverse colon to form the transverse mesocolon. And what are the contents of the greater omentum? The contents of the greater omentum is that it contains the right and the left gastroepiploic vessels, that is the artery and the vein both, which are anastomosed in between the first 2 layers of the greater omentum. Now, what is the function of this greater omentum? So if you see here in the cross sectional, that this is the greater curvature of the stomach, and this is the transverse colon that is going on. So in between this structure, this whole is known as the greater omentum. This whole part is known as the greater omentum. Now it contains fat, so it's a place which we can call it as a storehouse of a fat, and also it gives protection to the peritoneal cavity against infection because it has macrophages. And as it is forming a membrane or a cavity, so it will prevent the spread of infection. That is why, I told you before also, that greater omentum is also known as the policeman of the abdomen, because it is protecting or it is preventing the spread of infection from greater omentum, or from this area of the greater omentum towards the other side or towards the other organs like liver, kidney, spleen. It is preventing the spread of infection from one organ to the other organ. Now, can anyone repeat for me the boundaries of lesser omentum and for the greater omentum? Please, anyone? Deebalina, I can see you here. Would you like to try?
Boundaries or attachment, ma'am?
Yeah, the attachments of a lesser omentum and for greater omentum. Yeah.
Okay. Attachment of lesser omentum, first of all, it extends from the liver to the lesser curvature of stomach and first 2 centimeter of duodenum. And in the liver, it is attached as inverted L, and the horizontal limb of the L is attached to the porta hepatis, and the vertical limb is attached to the ligamentum venosum. And inferiorly, it is attached at the lesser curvature of stomach the hepatogastric part or hepatogastric ligament, and the next part, hepatoduodenal part or hepatoduodenal ligament, is attached at the first part or the first 2 centimeter of duodenum. It is the attachment of lesser omentum. And the attachment of greater omentum, it is actually the four-layered fold of peritoneum, and it is attached superiorly at the greater curvature of stomach, and then it is folded upon itself and attached and covers the transverse colon and attached to the transverse mesocolon or mesentery of the transverse colon.
Yes. And what are the contents of greater omentum?
The contents of greater omentums are lymphatics, lymphoid tissues first, and the anastomosis between
Between the right and left?
right and left gastroepiploic vessels.
Yeah, excellent. So
Thank
brilliant
you.
of you.
Thank you.
Now you will never forget it. I'm sure you will never forget it.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining everything so nicely.
Oh, no problem, dear. Now, these were the omentum that we talked about. We have a greater omentum and we have a lesser omentum. Now, I'm going to talk about the greater sac and the lesser sac. So, peritoneal cavity, it is once again divided into greater sac and the lesser sac. The greater sac, as the name indicates, it is greater, so it is larger. The lesser sac is smaller in size and it is found behind the stomach, lesser omentum and liver. And these two sacs, that is the greater sac and the lesser sac, they communicate with each other through the epiploic foramen, which is also known as foramen of Winslow or opening into the lesser sac. So this is one of the example that I wrote it when I was doing my exam. I used to make these points, small points. Now, what is lesser sac? If I can explain you in more detail. Now, lesser sac, it is another name for lesser sac. It is the omental bursa. Now, this omental bursa or the lesser sac, it is formed by the cavity in between the lesser and the greater omentum. Now, if you can see here with me, this layer is a greater omentum, and this is the lesser omentum. This space in between the greater and the lesser omentum is called as the lesser sac. Like if I consider this as in a space of greater omentum and this as in a space of lesser omentum, so in between both of them is the lesser sac. It is basically a cavity which is formed by the greater and the lesser omentum, and it is present behind the stomach. So everything, if you look here in the cross-sectional study, everything is here, it is behind the stomach, not in the anterior part of the stomach. So lesser sac is in the posterior relationship of the stomach. Please remember this because it has come as an important question. It was one of the questions in the exam asked that what comes in the posterior relationship of the lesser sac. So it's the stomach which comes in the posterior relationship of the stomach, of the lesser sac. Now it is closed, this lesser sac, it is closed on all the sides except at the epiploic foramen through which it communicates with the greater sac. Now at one end of this greater sac, there's a space in which it is also all four sides are covered except one side. Now what is that one side? It is an epiploic foramen. That it's an area, if we consider this as a greater sac, and if we consider it as a smaller, greater sac, and as in a smaller sac, L, and this is a G as a greater sac. So the space or it's an area which is closed on all the four sides. So it is going to be covered on all the four sides except this small space that is I have left in between, because it is going to work as a communication from the greater sac. It is going to work as a communication in between the greater sac, this lesser sac. So lesser sac and the greater sac, they are connected together. They are in a form of a cavity, which is also known as the lesser omentum. I'm sorry, I'll repeat this points once again, that lesser sac, it's a cavity which is formed in between the greater omentum and the lesser omentum. And this is small space, that is the epiploic foramen. It's the space which communicates it with the greater sac. Now, what are the boundaries of this lesser sac? So the lesser sac has four boundaries, that it has an anterior wall, a posterior wall, and the four margins, that is upper, lower, right, and the left margin. So if you look here in the boundaries of the lesser sac, superiorly we have the caudate lobe of the liver, and posteriorly we have the pancreas. On the anterior side we have the stomach. On the right side we have the epiploic foramen, and on the left side we have a spleen. So these are the boundaries of the lesser sac. Now please don't mix the boundaries of lesser sac and the lesser omentum. They are two different entities, or they are two different that we are talking about. Now this epiploic foramen, or this another name for this epiploic foramen, it is also known as foramen of Winslow or additus to the lesser sac. Additus means that it is an opening to the lesser sac, and this is also known as an omental foramen. Now, if I can explain you in a more clear diagram. Okay, if you look here with me, this is the greater sac and this is the lesser sac. So in between the space is known as a lesser omentum. This whole pinkish space is known as the lesser omentum. In between the lesser sac and the greater sac is known as the lesser omentum. Now, what is this epiploic foramen? It's an opening which is vertical and through which the lesser sac communicates with the greater sac. So basically, it's a way, or it's a connection connecting both the spaces. The lesser sac and the greater sac is known as the epiploic foramen. Now, where it is present, this epiploic foramen, it is present behind the right free margin of lesser omentum at the level of T12 vertebra. So this was the question asked in the exam, that what is the marking or the anatomical landmark of epiploic foramen. So in the options, you have to take your correct answer as at the level of T12 vertebra is the anatomical landmark of epiploic foramen. Now, what is the importance of this epiploic foramen? In cases of a strangulated internal hernia, which occurs in epiploic foramen, this space cannot be enlarged because of the presence of important structures which are all surrounding it. Because these are all the important structures like the liver, the gallbladder, the stomach, that is the lesser curvature, the greater curvature, and then comes the colon. This is the ascending colon, this is the transverse colon, this is the descending colon, and then begins the rectum and the anus. So basically, its main function is that it will prevent or to get the organs to be enlarged. Now, what are the boundaries of this epiploic foramen? So for epiploic foramen, um, yeah, I can understand. It's difficult. It's not difficult. It's basically we need to again go back and open the figures or the pictures in front of you while you are studying with me, because it will be more clear to you when you're given you open a picture to it, just to understand the boundaries. So in terms of the boundaries of the epiploic foramen, yes, definitely, Dr. Khan, you will do it. Don't worry. So in the boundaries of the epiploic foramen, we have anteriorly the free border of the lesser omentum, right free margin of the lesser omentum, which contains portal vein, hepatic artery, and bile duct. This was an exam question asking that what are the contents of the free margin of the lesser omentum. The correct answer to this question was it contains an artery, a vein, and a bile duct. That was hepatic artery, portal vein, and bile duct. And in the posterior relationship of epiploic foramen, we have inferior vena cava, we have right suprarenal gland, and we have T12 vertebra. If you can see, this is the right kidney. The above over here will be the right suprarenal gland that is going to be present here. And we have this as the T12 vertebra. Now superiorly, this hole is the liver. So this caudate process of the liver is in more contact with the epiploic foramen. And inferiorly, if we go downward, we have the first part of duodenum and also some part or the horizontal part only of the hepatic artery. If you can see that this is the, and if I can explain you more. This free margin of the lesser omentum, this hole is the lesser omentum. If you can see, this is space is the lesser omentum, and it has three structures in the right free margin, which contains the hepatic artery, the portal vein, and the bile duct. These are the structures present here in the boundaries, in the boundary of the lesser omentum, which is containing the right free margin, the lesser omentum, which contains portal vein, hepatic artery, and a bile duct. Now, what is great? Am I clear till here? Can anyone repeat for me the boundaries of lesser sac? Oh, sorry, the lesser sac and the epiploic foramen. Can we have a quick revision, please? Anyone would like to try? Dr. Humera, would you like to try? Nupur, Rubina, anyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure, Rubina.
Ma'am, epiploic foramen has inferiorly duodenum. Superiorly, it has superiorly a liver. On the ma'am, anteriorly it has the porta hepatis, that is hepatic artery, bile duct, portal vein, in the right free margin of lesser omentum, and posteriorly inferior vena cava and suprarenal gland. These are, ma'am, the
Which
boundaries.
vertebra? And what is the vertebra in the posterior
T12,
relationship?
T12 vertebra.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So you are recalling, you're remembering it now, and you will never forget it. I know. Once you
Yes,
start
ma'am.
speaking, definitely you will never forget it.
Thank you, ma'am.
No problem. Now this is what we studied all about the lesser sac. Now coming to the greater sac. Now what is greater sac? It is an area, or it extends from the diaphragm to the pelvic floor, and it can be appreciated by tracing the peritoneum in vertical and transverse dispositions. So if you look here with me, this whole area which is extending from the diaphragm, but if you look here, this is the diaphragm, and if you go down below this whole space, that is the dark brownish area. If you can see here with me, this is the whole area which I am marking with my pointer or my arrow. This whole space is known as the greater sac. Now this greater sac is a very now this greater sac is an area which is extending from the diaphragm to the pelvic floor, is known as the greater sac. So till now we have studied four things: greater omentum, lesser omentum, greater omentum, which is starting from the greater curvature of the omentum. Greater omentum, which is beginning from the greater curvature of the stomach. The lesser curvature, or the lesser omentum, which is starting or beginning from the lesser curvature of the stomach. Then we have greater sac, and we have the greater sac. The lesser sac, the greater sac, the greater omentum, and the lesser omentum. We have four things that we need to remember. Now next we have is a space that is the most common space that we all know. Morrison's pouch. It is another name for Morrison's pouch is the hepatorenal pouch. Now what is the importance of this hepatorenal pouch? It's the most dependent part. It's the most dependent part of the peritoneal cavity when the body is in supine position. So when a person is lying, you can see this Morrison's pouch, or the hepatorenal pouch. We can see it when the patient is lying. So all the fluid goes into this position, because of the gravity and because it's the most dependent part, whole of the fluid, it goes down into this Morrison's pouch. That is why it is also known that when the body is in supine position, it is the most dependent part. And why it is and now what is the importance of this most dependent part? It's important is that if there is any pus collection here, it can be tends to be collected here. The most of the pus you can drain it from here under ultrasound guidance. So this is the most dependent part when the body is in supine position. Now what are the boundaries of this hepatorenal pouch? It tells us that hepato means liver, renal means kidney. So the boundaries are going to be formed usually by these two organs. So if you look here in the boundaries, superiorly, it is formed by the inferior coronary ligament of the liver. Or simply, you can remember is that as in the superior relationship of the hepatorenal pouch is the liver, and inferiorly, we have the right flexure of the colon, and on the floor or in the posterior relationship, we have the anterior surface of the right kidney. So you can see as the name indicates hepatorenal pouch. So liver or hepato is in the superior relationship, the renal or the kidney is in the posterior relationship, and inferiorly we have the right flexure of the colon. And the importance of this hepatorenal pouch or Morrison's pouch is that most of the pus is going to collect here, or any collection is going to be collected in this dependent part when the person is in the supine position. And once we need to take this fluid out, we can take out this fluid under ultrasound guidance. Now the next pouch we have is the rectouterine pouch, or the pouch of Douglas, or rectovesical pouch, which is, most of us knows this pouch. We all know this pouch. That is the pouch of Douglas. Now it is the most dependent part. It is the most dependent part of the peritoneal cavity when the body is in upright position. So please, you have to remember this thing, that pouch of Douglas is also the dependent part, and also the Morrison's pouch is also the dependent part. But the Morrison's pouch is the dependent part when the patient is lying in supine position, and pouch of Douglas is the dependent part. The pouch of Douglas is the dependent part when the body is in upright position. So this is the difference in both of the pouches. That pouch of Douglas will be a pouch, dependent pouch, in case when the patient is in upright position or in sitting position. While in supine position, it is the most dependent part of the pelvic cavity. So now there was a question in the exam that I'm going to ask you, a patient who had a 45 years old patient was there who had a collection in the pouch of Douglas when the patient was in upright position. So when is she going to have in the dependent part as a part of pelvic cavity? So the answer to this question was that in the supine position, the pouch of Douglas is a dependent part of the pelvic cavity, and in the upright position, it is the dependent part of the peritoneal cavity. These are the two different things that you need to know, or you need to understand. Now, hepatorenal pouch, it is the dependent part of peritoneal cavity when the body is in supine position, and when the body is in upright position. So pouch of Douglas is the most dependent part of peritoneal cavity. But when the body is in supine position, so the most dependent part of the pelvic cavity will be pouch of Douglas. Or we can also call it as rectovesical pouch or rectouterine pouch. Now, what are the boundaries of rectovesical pouch or this pouch of Douglas? The boundaries are: anteriorly, it is formed by the uterus, and because the name indicates as a rectouterine pouch, so uterus is there in the anterior part, and posteriorly we have the rectum. We are going to study more of this pouch of Douglas when we come into the pelvic cavity. So anteriorly, we have the uterus and the posterior fornix of vagina, and posteriorly, we have in relationship as a rectum. And the floor is formed by the rectovaginal fold of peritoneum. So if you look here with me, this is the rectovaginal fold, which you can see here, and this whole pouch is a utrovesical pouch or pouch of Douglas. This is small space, if you can see, in between the uterus and the rectum. The posterior, this is the uterus, and if you go down below, will come the posterior fornix of the vagina. In between this small space is known as a pouch of Douglas. Now, what is the importance, or you can see here more clearly, it's more clear here. This is the uterus. This is the anterior fornix of the vagina that is going downwards, and this part, in this space in between, is known as the rectovesical pouch or the rectouterine pouch, or it is also known as pouch of Douglas. You can see here also that it is also known as the pouch of Douglas or the rectouterine pouch. Now, what is the importance of this pouch of Douglas? It is the most dependent part in erect or supine position, and the pus will be collected here. So you can drain the pus either by going through the fornix of the vagina through the posterior fornix of vagina. When you insert your needle, you can drain this fluid. So it can be drained either through the rectum now, or it can be drained through the posterior fornix of vagina. That is the importance of this pouch of Douglas. Am I clear till here?
Yes.
Is it clear? Okay. So can anyone just quickly repeat for us the boundaries of the Morrison's pouch and the pouch of Douglas? Is anyone?
Yes, I can try.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, please go.
Boundaries of Morrison pouch, it's anteriorly it is bounded by inferior quadrate ligament of liver, or posteriorly it is formed by colon, part of colon,
Yeah.
and inferiorly right flexure of colon, and floor is formed by right kidney,
Yes,
surface
right.
of right
Kidney.
kidney.
Yeah, Sana, very good.
And
And it is
about
the most, yeah, and it is the most
the
dependent
most
part in.
dependent part when supine, when person is in supine position, it is the most dependent part. Pus collects here, so
Yes,
it can be drained. Pus can be drained through this pouch.
yes. And now comes the pouch of Douglas. Yes.
In the pouch of Douglas, anteriorly it is lined by posterior fornix of vagina and the uterus, and posteriorly lined by rectus, and inferiorly rectovaginal fold, I think.
Yes, rectovaginal
And
fold.
it, yes, it is also dependent part of when the person is in supine position. It is the most dependent part of pelvic cavity, and when the person is in upright position, it is the most dependent part of peritoneal cavity.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much, Sana.
Welcome.
Yeah, I can see now you're learning.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. So, okay. So can anyone, so now what is the importance? Why did we study peritoneal cavity? Can anyone tell me? What are the conditions associated with this peritoneal cavity? Okay, I'm going to tell you that first of all, it causes peritonitis, which is a rigidity or a cardboard rigidity of the anterior abdominal wall. Secondly, this peritoneal cavity is really important for us to know because it can cause peritonitis, or sometimes there can be collection of fluid into the peritoneal cavity. That is what we call as ascites. Now, ascites, it's a peritoneal collection of fluid which is measuring more than 1.5 liters, which can happen in cirrhosis of liver, in cases of tuberculosis, which is a very rare cause in UK, and congestive heart failure and malignancy. It can also cause the spread of carcinoma cells through the peritoneum, and we can also do paracentesis. That is what we studied as the hepatorenal pouch. We can drain or we can tap the fluid from there in that position from the hepatorenal pouch. That is known as paracentesis. Or we can also drain the fluid of the ascites. Ascitic fluid can also be drained. That is also known as paracentesis. And one, we have this as a Fowler's position. Now, what is this Fowler's position? Please remember this position because it came in 2014 asking in the exam that what do you mean by Fowler position? And it was for the first time they did ask, and most of the students, they did it really very wrong. So please remember it. There's this Fowler position. It's an abdominal operation done for the patients, and the patients are usually placed propped up in bed with a back raise at an angle of 45. Now, why is the angle 45? To allow the peritoneal fluid to collect into the peritoneum by the gravity. So I'll repeat this Fowler position again, that after any abdominal surgery, we make the patient position at an angle of 45 just because we want the effect of gravity to cause the peritoneal fluid to go downwards into the peritoneal, by the help of the gravity, it will go into the pouch of Douglas. It will go into the most dependent part of the pelvic cavity. This is known as the Fowler position, in which after any abdominal operation, the patient would be lying at an angle of 45 degrees. Is this position clear? Fowler position? Sana, would you like to repeat it for me, please?
Yes, Fowler's position is the position that after any abdominal operation or any abdominal surgery, the patient is put in at the angle of 45 degree, so that all the exudate collects into the pelvic cavity due to gravity.
Yes,
Pelvic
excellent.
peritoneum. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad that you all of learning. And
Thank you.
so we can see this as an ascites. This is whole of the ascites. You can see here the fluid is draining by inserting a needle, and this is that the metastasis can happen or the cancer can spread through the peritoneum. And this is a laparoscopic surgery, which is a pelvic laparoscopy procedure, can be done from this site also. So do we have many questions before we discuss the questions? Any questions? No? Either you are learning or you are not learning at all. These can be the two possibilities if you don't ask the question. Okay, who is going to take the next? Who is going to take my first question? Because there are very few questions from this topic, which I found it. Anyone who can take the question, plus? Nupur, would you like to take the question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So it goes for you.
The lesser omentum contains the lower part of the lesser sac, is attached to the greater curvature of the stomach, contains the left gastric artery, is attached to the porta hepatis, is attached to the inferior border of the transverse colon.
So should I take you to the lesser omentum? Or
Yes,
you
ma'am.
remember the boundaries? Meanwhile, I want all of you to answer in the chat box for me.
Is attached to the porta hepatis, madam.
It is attached to the porta hepatis.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
In what shaped boundary? So the vertical ligamentum venosum and the horizontal limb is attached to the porta hepatis, and the
yes.
lateral border is attached to the lesser curvature of the stomach and lower border to duodenum.
Yes. Yeah. Very true. So okay, so read us the answer key for us. You could just read the answer key. Yeah.
Okay. Contains portal vein, common bile duct, and hepatic artery from liver to lesser curvature of stomach. Isn't attached to transverse colon.
So you were very right that the correct answer is G, that it is attached to the porta hepatis. It is not attached to the greater curvature of the stomach. It is attached to a lesser curvature of the stomach. That is why this option is also wrong. And it is not attached to the inferior border of the transverse colon. and it does not contain the left gastric artery. It contains the hepatic artery, the portal vein, and
Bile duct.
bile duct. Excellent. Okay, who's going to take the next question? I have very few questions today. Anyone, please? Sarah, would you like to try? Rubina, would you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. Please go.
Which one lies anterior to the lesser sac? A, stomach. Ma'am, stomach. Answer is, I think, stomach.
Yes.
B.
Yeah, you're very right. The answer is stomach. It's Sana, Nupur, yeah, all of you are correct. Okay, and what comes in the posterior relationship of lesser sac?
Ma'am, pancreas.
Pancreas, yes. Excellent. This was another question that came in the recalls, that what comes in the posterior relationship of the lesser sac? And the answer is, yeah, you very rightly said that it's pancreas. And who is going to take the last question? Anyone, please be active now. Hawaii? Inas, can we have you? Sana, would you like to try?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Which of the following is retroperitoneal organ? Kidney,
Hmm.
anus, transverse colon, inferior vena cava, urethra. Retroperitoneal. Kidney.
Hmm.
Kidney is the answer, I think. A.
Kidney is the answer.
Yes. Sad pucker,
And
you told.
yes, yes,
So
it's kidney,
kidney.
which is, yeah, kidney, which is the right answer. That is sad pucker. And what are the examples of intraperitoneal organ? Can you repeat it for us, please?
Stomach, ileum, jejunum, cecum,
Hmm.
appendix.
And appendix
Yes.
also. Yeah, appendix also. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Welcome.
Sana. No problem. Okay. So do we have any other questions before we end the session? I'll be posting this PDF file just after the session is over. I'll just post this so that you can revise through it. Any questions? I'm not making it a very long session because I can combine 2 sessions, then it would get a class of 3 to 4 hours. I just want to make it a very 1.5 to 2 hour session so that you can all go through the recordings easily and very quickly and just revise that part quickly for today, especially. No problem. Okay. Deebalina, can I have you unmuted, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, in the group you were asking about this for the exam. For the exam, you had a bit confusion for this part 1, part 2, and part 3, like how to go for the GMC
Exactly,
registration.
ma'am. I
Yeah.
came to know about that information, but you told me true actually.
Yeah, actually, I'll tell you what happens. There are 2 ways you can go through. Either like after you give you can either give your part 1, part 2, and part 3. Then you apply for this GMC registration. But before giving GMC, you need to, for the IELTS, you need to have a score of 7.5 band in all of them, like reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And if you can either do IELTS or you can either do OET, that is occupational English test. For that you need to get a score of B in all of them. Then you can apply for your GMC registration. And another one is that
But
you Mhm.
okay.
Yes, please ask. Then I'm going to tell you. No problem. Yeah, continue.
But is it true that 4 years of experience in gynae residency is necessary for eligibility criteria in part 3? Is it
Yes,
true?
yes. When I gave
Okay.
my exam, it was for part 2. That before giving part 2, I have to do my training for 4 years. But now, the day you complete your part 1, you can give next day. You can give your next exam. But when I was giving my exam, I had to wait for 4 years for giving part 2 after part 1.
All right.
So now they have just made the changes in the and or the other thing is you can go through an MTI program. That is, you give your MRCOG part 1, part 2, and you get the registration here done. But for that, you have to fulfill all the criteria that you should have you should have a passport of any country, foreign country. You need to have a passport of that, and along with that, your training should be of in UK for I think for 4 years or 2 years. That is in the form.
All right.
These are the two ways you can go through. So most of us, like all what we do,
All right.
we just give our part 1, part 2, part 3, we give our IELTS or OAT, and then we just go for the registration. Hope I'm clear to you,
All right.
Rizalin. Yeah. So now I can
Yes,
see
yes,
your
ma'am.
yeah, all
Absolutely.
right. No,
Thank you.
okay,
Thanks
no
a lot.
problem. No problem. So now I can see your hand raised. Yeah. So now please, yeah.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask, 3 months
Mhm.
a very small period of time. I think it's very difficult to complete the syllabus in this time. What do you suggest?
I guarantee you that you can do this exam. Even with if you're working, Sana, you can do this
Yes,
exam.
yes, I'm
Because
working and
all of us are working. If you just like study 3 to 4 hours daily, but in
okay,
the last 15 days, if you can take your off for 15
okay,
to 20 days, and then
okay,
just give your whole time. And
okay. But
yeah, mhm.
the questions do repeat or not?
Yes, they do repeat. They do repeat, but they will repeat in a different way. Like if the in the exam, if the question came in 2012, like what is the retroperitoneal organ? So now they can give what is an intraperitoneal organ. The question is the same,
Okay,
just like this there can be changes. Otherwise, exam is very easy and it is not out of the syllabus. It's
okay,
only related to obs
okay.
and gynae. No medicine, no nothing physio, nothing is there different from that.
Just a bit worried because I haven't submitted the fee yet. So I was thinking that is it possible I can complete the syllabus in 3 months? So just wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Thank
No,
you.
it's no problem, no problem. If any problem is, I just post it in the group. Definitely, whenever I'll see, I'll just answer them over there also in the group. So, any questions before we end here?
Ma'am,
Yes, Nupur.
ma'am,
Now
I wanted to,
I'm remembering your voices also. Now this is Nupur, this is Sana. I can remember now.
ma'am, I wanted to inquire about the
Mm-hmm.
MTI way.
Yes.
After giving part 1 and the IELTS, we can move to UK through MTI, no, ma'am?
Yes, you can move through MTI, but for that, you need to have a passport of a foreign country, like
Yeah,
not of Pakistan, and your training should be in UK.
ma'am, my training has completed from India.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have an Indian passport and I
Mm-hmm.
have more than 4 years experience in India. So, after part 2 and IELTS, I can apply for jobs through MTI pathway in NHS, no? Or can I not?
No, you can't because you're not working in UK.
So, how to start working in UK, ma'am? Then, to after all the exams only it is possible.
Yes, for most of the like for Pakistani students, for Indian students, and even what I did my part 1, I did my part 2. and then for part 3, and then came to here.
Okay, so we
And
need to
then
complete the whole exam before moving to UK.
that is the wise option, you do it. Because when you come here, you will not be able to work. Even if you
Ma'am,
can, yeah.
my friends are like have completed part 1 and they have given IELTS and they are working as like not as consultants but maybe at par of ST1, I guess.
Okay, so what they have done, they can have they can either have given the PLAB exam. They
No,
must have
ma'am,
given the no.
no, they went through MTI pathway. They gave their part 1 and they gave their IELTS. And
Okay.
then they search for NHS job and at
Mhm.
par ST1 they were taken.
Mhm. So now they have training now for UK.
Yeah. So now
Yeah.
they part 2 and part 3 from there. And then they can enter into ST3 and ST4, ST5.
Yes, that is also the way, but that is the reason that they are working in UK for these people, for your friends, that they are working. You need to be working in.
From India to UK, so I can give part 1 and IELTS, and then I can move to UK, work in UK, and then I can give part 2 and part 3. Isn't there like this option available?
Yes, you can go for this option, but look, let me tell you that you must be working in your country as a consultant. But when you come here, you will be to a very low junior level. So why to do that? Because you are a consultant in your country, then why to go for such a very low career?
Okay, so after completing part 2 and part 3, I will
After
be at,
completing part 2, you will have to go to UK for giving your exam for part 3, because part 3 is always in UK usually.
okay. So only for the exam I'll have to go, and then
Yes.
once I get the exam, then how will I get training in UK? Then I can apply jobs at par of
Yeah.
consultant.
Yes, then you will be a consultant in the UK directly. You will be a consultant after clearing the exam.
Ma'am, I can do my part 2 from India only, and I can
Yes.
pass part 2 also from
Yes.
India also. Because
Yes.
I thought it was easier. It will be very difficult from India to
No,
get
no,
a
it's no, it's very easy. It's very easy. Even few of my friends, they're also from India, so they are also doing it like this.
Ma'am, approximately how much time of will I need to study for part 2 with my work and with my baby?
Yeah, for part 2, for if you have started giving your exams in your country, like you have done your guidelines, so it takes 4 months only. You can do it
Okay.
easily in 4 months.
And part 3, ma'am, is some special training is required for part 3, or only the whole subject of part 2 is only there, but just some clinical is added to part 3?
No. Part 3 is just you need to speak to the patient in English.
So
Because in our
it
country, we speak our own language. Like in your country, you must be speaking your language, Hindi, usually with your patients.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
So
so
in the part 2, we have to give part 3, no, because the subject is fresh in our mind.
yes, exactly. You don't need to then wait because everything is fresh in your mind. You just need to learn how to speak in English in a good way. And then you can go for the exam.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so
No
much.
problem. No problem. Yes, Nupur, I can see your hand raised. Any question?
No, ma'am, it was from before only.
Oh, okay, no problem. Any further questions? So shall we end the session? No more questions if there are no more questions? Yes, Rubina, the booking for the exam has already started. You can now book for the exam for January 2021.
Ma'am, when we open the site, the booking, ma'am, it doesn't show. Previously, they were saying that booking will start from 17th September.
Yes,
But
exactly.
now booking has not started yet.
Okay, it not started. Okay, I will go through the website again,
Yes,
and will
ma'am.
update you in the group. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Because
Thank you,
what
ma'am.
lastly I saw, it was 17th September, the exam,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
application
But
form
now
was
they
open.
are saying that due to Corona, maybe it is postponed. They haven't given the date yet.
Okay, okay. Okay, I'll see it and I will just post it in the group.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
No problem. Yes, and Rubina, the passing percentage, it depends. You need to score around more 65% to 70% in both paper, part 1 and part 2. Paper 1 and paper 2.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
No problem. Any other questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Definitely will meet you with the next session. The next topic will be pelvis. We are going to start with the pelvis. And are you all okay with this time, or do you want me to change the timing? Is this time okay for all of you? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great then. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Good night, Allah Hafiz. Take care.